Holy Gospel, according to St. Luke, the second chapter. Now every year, Jesus' parents went to Jerusalem for the festival of the Passover. And when he was 12 years old, they went up as usual for the festival. When the festival had ended and they started to return, the boy Jesus stayed behind in Jerusalem. But his parents didn't know it. Assuming that he was in the group of travelers, they went a day's journey. Then they started to look for him among their relatives and friends. When they did not find him, they returned to Jerusalem to search for him. After 3 days, they found him in the temple, sitting among the teachers, listening to them and asking them questions. And all who heard him were amazed at his understanding and his answers. When his parents saw him, they were astonished, and his mother said to him, "Child, why have you treated us like this? Look, your father and I have been searching for you in great anxiety." He said to them, "Why were you searching for me? Didn't you know I must be in my father's house?" But they didn't understand what he said to them. Then he went down with them and came to Nazareth, and he was obedient to them. His mother treasured all these things in her heart. And Jesus increased in wisdom and in years, and in divine and human favor. This is the gospel of the Lord. Thanks be to God. God's grace, mercy, and peace be to you this day, through Christ our Savior and Lord. Amen. I had to do a double take when I first heard this reading. I thought, didn't we just have this? Mary treasuring all these things in her heart. That language was so familiar. I thought, wait a minute, that's what we heard on Christmas Eve, but this isn't the same reading, but it's the same words. Wait, what's happening here? I had to do a little research, dig around a little bit. So this, in verse 51, it says, Mary treasured all these things in her heart. It also says, all the way back in verse 19, Mary treasured all these things in her heart. Let me tell you that I wanted to find out, is this actually the same word here? Because it seems kind of important here, what Mary's doing, how Mary responds to the situation. In verse 19, the Greek word is suntereo, which has to do with remembering or observing, committing something to memory, making sure that that it's locked in your mind. In verse 51 in our lesson today, the word is diatereo, which means to pay close attention, to watch closely. So it's a little bit different. Similar words, related words, but a little bit different. So basically what's happening here is when Jesus is born and the shepherds show up, it says Mary treasured all these things in her heart. Well, what she's doing is she's committing this story to memory. The shepherds are saying, guess what? Angels showed up. While we were doing our thing out in the fields, making sure the sheep were safe, guess what? These angels were there, and Mary is memorizing this story. And I'm thinking, poor Jesus, as he's growing up, how many times did he have to hear this story? Oh, Jesus, when you were born, there were these shepherds, they were these strange guys, they showed up, there were angels. Yes, Mom, I know the story. You've told me 1,000 times. I know. Families have stories like this, right, that we tell about one another. And especially moms love to tell birth stories. Well, Mary's got a real doozy here. So she has committed this story to memory. But here, Jesus is a little older. We jump from his birth all the way up to 12 years old. That's kind of the end of his childhood. In the Jewish understanding, 13 would be an adult. So he's still technically a child here, but he's showing some adult tendencies already. And so we have this situation here, this story where Jesus is in the temple. And what does she do when Jesus disappears? Diatereo. She watches him like a hawk. She's keeping a close eye on this kid. First of all, that's what a good mom does, right? You watch your kid, especially if he's prone to disappearing. Second of all, what in the world kind of kid is this that hangs out in the temple? Most kids aren't likely to be found in the church, in the house of God. They're going to be out in the playground. They're going to be out making trouble at the stream with their friends. The temple? I better watch this kid. He seems maybe a little different. Sure enough. We'll come back to this in a moment. This whole idea of Mary treasuring all these things in her heart and what that really means. So for the past week or so, at least, and longer than that even, I've had the radio on listening to the Christmas songs. And I'm wondering if anybody else has noticed the trend in Christmas music, that even though this is a joyous and celebratory time of year, there's some really depressing Christmas songs. You notice this? I actually found a list of some of the top most depressing Christmas songs. Christmas Time is Here, a beautiful song, Charlie Brown soundtrack. It's beautiful, but it's kind of heartbreaking at the same time. Have yourself a merry little Christmas. Who can still hear Judy Garland's voice and just the heartbreaking nature of this beautiful song? That was the worst Christmas ever. I can't think of the tune on that one. Of course, Last Christmas, that was popularized by George Michael. Last Christmas I gave you my heart, and the very next day you gave it away. I end up changing the station every time I hear that one. It just drives me nuts. And it's depressing. It's depressing. Blue Christmas by Elvis. The list goes on and on. These depressing, awful Christmas songs that are both, oh yay, it's Christmas, but wait a minute, what are we singing about here? Singing about heartache, about loss, about feeling alone. And I'm thinking, maybe there's a reason there's so many songs written around this time of year about those hard feelings as well. Because I think we do feel a lot of that, and we do struggle with feeling that sense of joy and celebration that we're supposed to feel. Distance and loss can feel that much more intense through the holidays. And even if you aren't mourning something in particular, if you don't have a specific heartache, it can be hard for the season to really measure up to all the hype that we're supposed to be celebrating and joyous. It can be hard to feel a tremendous and overwhelming joy that we're told we're supposed to have sometimes. And we're left here on the other side of Christmas now that it's past, and many of us have had celebrations of some kind or another, had a gathering, had a party, and we're left on the other side saying, well, did we do it? Is that it? Are we done? Did we pack it all up again? Boy, that sounds like exhaustion too. More work to be done. Great. And I'm thinking, Mary was pregnant, and it's not uncommon for a new mother to feel a sense of letdown, a sense of sadness, a little postpartum. And I'm wondering if we might struggle with a little post-Christmasdom. Post-Christmas. A little letdown after the holidays, thinking, well, okay, another year, another holiday. I don't know that it was everything that it could have been or was supposed to be, but okay, we got through it. I think that's an honest feeling. And maybe you're not feeling that way. But I know that there are people who do feel this way, and clearly the songs on the radio reflect that those are real feelings. And I think we do ourselves a disservice if we don't at least acknowledge that. And the issue compounds itself. All these merry, jolly, happy tidings can make you just want to go back to life as usual. Okay, I'm going to pack it up. Just let me go back to work, Go back to my normal routine, my normal schedule. That's why I think it's so interesting that we have this particular reading today assigned to us. That we should have this reading about Jesus when he's 12. All of a sudden we go from his infancy to being 12 years old, being an adolescent, being a little rebellious maybe. I'm going to rebel against my parents and stay in the church. Big rebel there, Jesus. Boy. The text begins by telling us that every year his parents go to Jerusalem for the festival of the Passover. Just for frame of reference, if their typical pace would have been about 15 miles a day, so it would have taken about 4 or 5 days to get to Jerusalem. So that's, if you're talking almost a week on each side, that's a good chunk of time that's taken this family to travel. It says that this was they were going as usual. So this was their annual custom. The Greek word here is ethos, which is where we get our English word ethics, strangely enough. It refers to a pattern of behavior that is more or less fixed by tradition and generally sanctioned by society. So it's something that people do, kind of like putting up Christmas trees. It's what people do. It's what we've done. It's fixed by tradition and sanctioned by society. The word is frequently translated custom or habit. So the family is doing what they do this time of year. They're fulfilling traditions, customs, routines, and what happens? They lose Jesus in the process. All their traditions and routines, all the coming and going and the busyness, they lose Jesus. It may sound hard to believe. How do you lose your kid? Well, have you ever been to the mall with your kid? It's not that hard. Another thing that's happening here is that the word in the text suggests that this was not just the immediate family. This was a huge caravan. This was a whole huge group of people. The extended family would have all been there. The whole village would have traveled together. This wasn't just a family tradition. This was the village, the nation celebrating this time of year, this Passover. And so everybody was on pilgrimage. Everybody was on the road. Everybody's coming and going. And they would have had friends and neighbors and extended family all traveling together. So they figure, Jesus is just playing with his cousins. He's in the back of the caravan here, probably playing with a neighbor kid. Who knows? Well, he's fine. We all know each other. We're all from the same neighborhood. It's okay. And it wasn't for a day that they finally realized, wait a minute, where is he? We need to actually put eyes on the kid. And they realize he's missing. It takes them 3 full days to get all the way back to the temple, to retrace their steps all the way back to Jerusalem to the temple and find him there. Mary and Joseph were so busy fulfilling the custom and the tradition and the habit, the routine, only for Jesus at 12 years old to reveal that in the process they missed the point. He's back at temple, asking questions, sharing insights, growing in his faith, and growing in his relationship with God. Where were you? We were worried, sick about you, as Mom says. Why? Jesus says. I was right here doing exactly what we came to do. Isn't that why you taught me that we have these customs and these traditions and these habits? To grow in our faith and understanding, to grow in our relationship with God. Takes a kid to point this out. Trees, lights, stockings, presents, concerts, cookies, wreaths, traveling church services. And on the other side of it, by a day or two, we're asking like Mary and Joseph, so where's Jesus again? The thing is, Jesus hasn't gone anywhere. Where do you think I'd be? He asks. I'm in God's house. And then the interesting thing, how does Mary respond to that? You're restricted, little man. You're on timeout. Nothing like that. No. Dia tereo. She watches him like a hawk. She pays close attention. This kid snuck out beyond our recognizing where he was here. So we got to keep an eye on him for that reason. But he makes a good point. In the midst of our coming and going, in the midst of our fulfilling the tradition, we lost sight of what it's all about. And he remembered. Got to keep an eye on this kid. Maybe we can learn something from him. And I think we should take Mary's lead here and do the same. Maybe even turning off the Christmas songs, the joyful and the sorrowful. And do our best to pay attention to what God is doing in the midst of the season, where God is showing up. Reading and rereading these scriptures. Again, telling the story. Praying more often throughout the day. And treasuring all these things in our hearts. Committing them to memory. Paying close attention to them. And remembering what the season is truly